Berries, anybody?
Did you say berries?
I got some raspberries here.
No, I got to admit, I don't eat a lot of raspberries.
I don't usually, but
Inside this room, all of my dreams become realities, and some of my realities become dreams.
All my life I've awaited your coming and dreaded it.
I like them Frank fried potatoes.
Insanity runs in my family. Practically gallops.
I always have a wonderful time wherever I am, whomever I'm with. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Very excited to have our next two guests back on. It's Senator Nick Frentz and Steve Fink, Esquire. Appreciate them both being here. I'm pushing all the buttons I hear. What are we talking about? I'll tell you what we're talking about. And I think Steve will get on board with me on this, although he follows enough along that he will understand it, so it's not quite such a big deal. Senator Frentz is in the mix of this, and I think he can be the one to start it. When we talk the budget, Steve, it's driving me a little crazy this year, and we keep hearing the governor's going to cut $256 million. I think the House wants $1.4 billion. They're going to cut. The Senate wants $2.4 billion. I mean, these are massive numbers of cuts. Everybody's going to be happy. But here, Steve, if you look at it, 4 years ago, we had a $52 billion budget. Then we was roughly 54, but we got that $18 billion, a little much, brought in that we weren't expected. So we spent it. Fine. If that's, they were in charge, they spend it, Steve. But they're talking cutting from that top number now. The number we're looking at is in the mid 60s, and from 54, if you will, to mid 60s. It sounds like an increase. It sounds like they're saving me so much money, I'm going broke. Does all this make sense to you, Steve? You know what I'm saying? When they're telling you they're cutting, but it seems like a bigger number every year.
well, in government, just generally, that's the only group that comes out and says we're cutting the budget when they're really just decreasing the increase. Now, I can't speak to what we've got exactly going here, and Nick would certainly have a far better handle on that than I am. But I think the $18 billion, 17, whatever the number is, seemed like a lot to have spent, and now we're trying to figure out how to, cut some of that to balance our budget. And even if it's balanced, it's going to be significantly larger than it was the previous year. So I'm not quite sure how the numbers all work out.
Well, let me ask you, Senator Frentz, if I can, and you didn't start this, but I think
Please.
you can start. I think you can start the new wave of let's just tell it like it is, and it's fine if we need $66 billion to make the budget. Okay, tell me that's it. Democrats can say they want 67, the Republicans say whatever that number is, and we can all play nice. But I think enough folks, unlike Steve, who pay attention, don't understand you're cutting the increase of what you wanted to have, and that's a decrease. It's a shell game, and I'd like it to stop. Your thoughts, sir? You live in that world. You talk that talk with those people all the time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's good seeing you both again. Glad to rejoin Al Travis show. Let's have some fun here. I do try to explain the state's budgeting like this. And the first thing you need to understand is that we pass into law certain spending and certain revenue. Sure. Your taxes, that's in law. You will pay X percent of your income every year. Spending, schools, for example, we pass a law that says you will spend this much. And by the way, in that category, it will increase by inflation each 2 years. So I use this comparison to help people sort of put it where it is, and then they can tell us what they want us to do. It's taxpayers' money. 4 years ago, we had a budget, I don't know, 52, I think 54, 55 sounds about right. But since then, we have had about 20% inflation nationwide. So that if we do not change the spending, you'd expect the budget to go to about the mid 60s. And folks, for context, this is billions with a B, and it's a 2-year budget.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the
134.
budget. Yeah. So what we're talking about now is a lot like a family that makes $65,000, $66,000 a year. And the projections are that for the next 2 years, we're going to make about an extra $500, and our expenses are going to stay the same. Sounds like no big deal for your average family, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, our accountants, MMB, are saying that's true. But in 4 years, you're going to be like a family that makes 65, 66,000, and your expenses are going to be 71. So that, like a family, the state of Minnesota is saying, all right, what do you guys want to do? Thank you, Al Travis, for correctly flagging that it is the Senate that proposes stop to the increase more than the House. The House put out a budget that essentially would not balance in the following 4 years, the 28-29 budget, a $1.3 billion deficit proposed by the House if we were to adopt their provisions. The Senate and the governor proposed budgets that would balance in those 4 years and would balance in the next 2 years, primarily by slowing the growth in education and health and human services. And you've heard me say this before, although I'm not positive on the Al Travis show where you go for your most information. The 3 areas of increase in spending in Minnesota that were not forecasted correctly are special education, long-term care, and services that we provide to Minnesotans with disabilities. So we'll talk about that on the Al Travis show. And we may even visit it in the finance committee where I'm the vice chair.
We get a ton of that with Hoffman comes on here when those come out, and he takes a big hit on that. So we get a lot of conversation with that about that. Am I wrong, though, Senator? You guys, and I'm happy you're looking 4 years out. Don't get me wrong. If we have this big thing coming, we should take a look at it now. But you only have to budget for the next 2 years, right? Do you have to? You're shaking at your head in radio.
You are correct. Sorry.
Okay.
We're on Facebook. No. Oh, don't forget, there's a lot about the facial expression here. Steve Fink and I are not on here for our brains. It's for our looks.
That's exactly true. This is what YouTube is looking for.
This is important for your listeners, and thank you for flagging that too. The Constitution requires that we put out a budget that balances the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Folks, just for context, we start on July 1st. That's the 2026-2027. So that's got to balance. It is not required that we balance the following 4 years, but we almost always do. I would say 95, 98% of the time, for the same reason as that family would probably not say, between the husband and wife, oh, Harry, let's just, plan to run out of money in 2 years.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad we do it. I'm just going to say that is something they're looking forward to, and these cuts to growth are to match something 4 years out, which leave them some ground. Hey, Steve, just out of curiosity, you follow along with tariffs and everything else going on the national level. What do you think that's going to do for the state of Minnesota?
Well,
we have no idea.
Yeah, my hope is that things settle down, and I don't know that the president has done the greatest job of delineating exactly how, why the tariffs were implemented across the board. I think people can understand that if somebody if China, for example, is instituting a tariff on U.S. goods of 50%, that we can match that, and that makes sense to a lot of people. It's okay if you're charging us that, we're going to do the same across the board. I'm not sure that made a whole lot of sense. I think it caused a lot of disruption, but obviously, this president is going to take, he's going to have us take medicine and bitter medicine for the first months of his administration, with the expectation and the hope that by Christmas time, this is all a distant memory.
On that, Senator Frentz, with all that is happening on a national level, like it or not, some do, some don't. How does the OMB, I think it's the OMB, come up with the number that life is going to be like 4 years from now? How do I don't want to tell that person's a shot in the dark, but we can't tell what's going to happen next week, and they're telling you 4 years from now.
You're right, and Steve's right also. The uncertainty is by itself a little bit of a drag on our businesses and on our state revenue and national revenue. So I hope we get some clarity. Al, MMB, Minnesota Management and Budget, has some budget rules. I didn't really follow these closely till I became the vice chair of finance, but they're actually pretty good, kind of like best practices for accountants. And what it says is their forecast can only take into account changes at the federal level which have already been made. So, for example, it is proposed in the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate that they'll cut $1.4 trillion in spending over the next 10 years. On the face of it, sounds good, right? But MMB cannot speculate where those cuts would come or how they would affect Minnesota revenue. Soybean farmers, for example, are apprehensive about the trade war with China. MMB does not put that into your state budget forecast until the federal government actually makes those changes in law or those changes in budget.
But I presume it has nothing with executive orders. I don't know when they came out. They came out with that $6 billion deficit before Trump signed these tariff things going on. So all of that's happening currently had no influence on this 4 to 6 billion. You're shaking your head again. That's correct. I mean, they couldn't have known he was going to do that.
No, there are some changes at the federal level, including executive orders, that are already done. For example, we've seen changes at the Department of Veterans Administration, layoffs of about 1,500. Those types of things, which have already happened, do get taken into account in the state budget forecast.
All right, fair enough. I've got to go to break. When we come back, I want to talk about just fraud in general. The one came out yesterday. Yes, Monday. Found out about this ghost student fraud. And I'm honestly to the point now, and I'll leave it up with you guys, a couple of good lawyers. I don't know if we need lawyers anymore. I'm sorry, gentlemen. We make it so easy to steal from us. Anybody can do it. You don't even need a lawyer. You just at some point lay your cards on the table and say, yeah, I did it because it was so easy. I thought they wanted me to. We'll use that as my excuse coming up with Senator Nick Frentz, Steve Fink right after this.
If it's your turn to host a game, Grandpa's Barbecue suggests you try something different. Put out the perfect barbecue flavor of Grandpa's Barbecue. Add it to your ribs, dip the meatballs, or drench your wings in the original flavor of Grandpa's Barbecue. It isn't too hot or spicy, fruity or smoky or whatever. Grandpa's Barbecue. Available in select stores and online at grandpasbarbecueshop.com.
There are many ways to explore Alexandria. Some like to experience the outdoors and all the fun winter in Minnesota can provide. Pick your favorite way to get in touch with nature. Others like to explore downtown in the warm comfort of a boutique or gathered around a table with friends. You can do all of that or relax and do nothing at all. Come explore Alexandria. Start planning at explorealex.com.
You hear me, Nick?
Yeah,
Can anybody else hear us?
we might be on Facebook.
Well, then let's just chat very pleasantly. And
May I just say how professional you look this morning?
well, I eat right and I take vitamins. I try to
Clearly.
exercise.
You're still on YouTube being taped. I'm sorry I didn't get your message earlier about I forgot to send it to your laptop. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
30
I'm on the phone. It sounds like it's working.
30 seconds.
It's nice to know a guy that knows a guy. Al Travis.
I know him. He's Senator Nick Frentz and also Steve Fink. They're in a couple of great lawyer minds. I think that the newest plea deal you guys got to memorize is you made it so easy, sir. My client had to take the money. Here's what came out yesterday. Ghost students, community colleges, 2-year and community colleges, An example being Century College in 2023, 15% of the students going to Century did not exist. I mean, 15%. Basically what happens, some knucklehead somewhere in his mother's basement signs up for these online classes at Century and every other community college known to mankind in any state, comes up with a name, sends it to the school. They send in for the FICA and the federal, whatever it is they give them, and the school gets their money, and the rest of it then goes into the bank account of said student Al. Once they find out he's fake, the school's got to pay the money back, but guess what? The kid's gone with the money. How easy do we make it to steal from us? And when do people get mad? Here's what it said in the article, which I thought hilarious. One way they could stop that is make sure that you have to show up for at least one class. Because if I'm signed up to 4,000 classes across the country, I can't make it. You don't show up, you don't get the money. But they said that was a whole lot of work. Steve, you're nodding your, or Nick, you're nodding your head. At some point, when do I get to say, seriously? That's
Never. I mean, back in the old West, they used to say, I'll tell you what we'll do with the payroll lockbox with the gold. We're going to put it on a wagon train, and we're going to send it out there with a couple of guys with shotguns. Pretty soon, the criminals were like, let's see. What if we showed up with more than two guys? Then the railroad said, well, we'll just put it on the locomotives. Can't stop a locomotive. That's a scientific fact. They started blowing up the tracks. We'll always be chasing criminals. It's the 3% that want to steal and sometimes find an easy path. And the 97%, the law-abiding citizens like Steve Fink and everybody else on this call, are sitting there saying, what a pain in the neck that I have to jump through these hoops. To which law enforcement would say, if we don't have you jump through those hoops, we're not going to catch as many of that 3%.
You good with that, Steve? Because I'm saying, that was a great answer, by the way. Much better than the whole cowboy and Indians thing. And I liked it. Very visual. But Steve, we're talking, and I go back to feeding our future where all this kind of started. It was the matter of just saying you fed 3,000 kids. Oh, okay, here's your check. There must be something we can do to say no.
Yeah, I think feeding the future, those types of fraud are different than this, than the college online, simply because it is online. And, we've all had our computers, I shouldn't speak for the two of you, but it probably have hacked where they come in and, I remember a few years ago calling wherever the hell they told me to call and on a Saturday, and I just absolutely every curse word in the book and said, think how much you could be offering society if you weren't such an a-hole. These guys are really good. They know how to work the system. And they usually work it out of somebody's basement. And it is so terribly frustrating. That's how it's always been, though. It's the few that spoil it for everybody. And we have to jump through all these ridiculous hoops because a few guys have figured out how to scam the system, and they do it very well, and they don't care. They're immoral or amoral people. They don't care. And for them, it's all a game.
Yeah, just real quick, Al, I agree with Steve 1,000%. There's a couple examples. First of all, Medicare fraud in Florida. I don't think I'm overstating this, but I mean, they have individual years where they get $1 billion of your tax money stolen, even though they've been fighting Medicare fraud for decades. I mean, decades they've been saying, that isn't even a doctor. That's not even a real kind of treatment. And you sent them $2,700? And the other one is, if you recall, just a few years ago, Hyundai had established a type of vehicle that was easier to steal, they felt, because it was more convenient for the buyers. Guess what happened? Everybody stole them all. And I think Steve's point is the right one. Why do we have a subset of humans that are not only willing to steal, but let's face it, kind of excited by it? Russian hackers. I think it's just the human condition that not everybody is a Steve Fink, the straightest shooter of all time.
But I guess my point is we got to try harder. The reason we mess up, we had a pandemic, and you take the Department of Education and tell them to feed our kids, wait a minute, why not do that with the people that feed our kids on a regular basis? We just threw the money first and then hope everybody could make it work, made it easy. This school funding, now that drives me nuts because we've only been funding kids in school, at least as long as my kids have been going to school. We must have some safeguards. I find it hard to believe little speed bumps, like they say, well, we could make each kid show up for one class, make sure he's a human, and that would get rid of 90% of it. Well, is that so much to ask?
No, I think that's very reasonable. And I think, we're talking about the evolution of theft. It's been going on for dozens of years in the human race that people have been stealing. And, you try to make it harder. A great example for you, Al, for a future episode is we're working on permitting reform in Minnesota, the way we speed up business permitting. Yeah. Everyone's like, well, this will be easier. It'll be faster. Everybody wins. But you watch. There'll be one example of someone who goes, what do you mean my widget factory didn't get its permit? Yeah. I established it in some city that doesn't exist. Just send me the money and we'll keep fighting. There's cyber crime is really the boom area in the last 25 years. And I don't have a computer science degree, so I'm not going to be much help, but we'll keep trying.
All right. We are out of time, my boys. I do appreciate you coming back. Mr. Frentz, thank you. Mr. Fink, always a pleasure to have you guys on. We'll do it again, huh? Fair enough.
That went fast.
Well, you know why? Because you guys talk a lot. Okay, and I appreciate that. Be right
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Steve.